Alrighty, we're going to be running some MC cable and putting some outlets here in a business rental. Here in the country I was born in, we use 12 American wire gauge on 20 amps, 14 American wire gauge on 15 amps. Black is live, white is neutral, the bare or the green is the ground. Red and blue are also live colors. However, you may find white live in a switch loop or a 220-240 volt circuit where the appliance does not require a neutral. And that switch loop would be on a 110-120 volt circuit. So I'll show you how to cut a piece of MC cable and put the bushing in and get it ready to run some wires. Okay, we're putting some outlets in a commercial building here. And we're going to make our wire a little longer in here, so we got to get this piece down like that there. See how it's angled down like that? And we'll tighten our nut here so it looks like that, and we'll just turn it until you feel it, till this handle starts turning free like that, and then we'll loosen this up. And we'll take our jacket off here. And I'll cut this little bit of a sharp edge right in here, like that. We'll get our plastic down here. This is what's called an anti-short bushing, and we'll put it in to protect our wires. And you just push it in like this. But it doesn't seem to want to go, so you don't get mad at it. You just take it out and you do it again. Okay, so we got it seated in there like this here. That's how you want it. These are the MC cable connectors. And one thing I like to do, I like to use a little electrical tape to hold my bushing in place so it stays inside. So again, I'll just make sure it's down flush like this here. See how it's down nice and flush? And I'll tape it in place. And we'll stick our MC cable connector clamp on here. Let's push it down. We'll just tighten our screw up so it holds the cable in place. Make sure it's not poking through where it could cause a short inside the cable. Okay, so we'll start running our wire from the outlet that we are going to be coming out of. We're coming out of an existing circuit here. We ran a new line earlier to this outlet, and we're going to run the outlets up above here for the additional outlets for the workbench. An electronic repair shop is moving in, so I'm glad to do this. And the technician is a very close friend of mine, and the landlord here is a very good landlord. He has a very good reputation around town, and I enjoy helping him out and helping him get good renters. So I'll show you how to hook these, how to run this MC cable and add additional outlets. Okay, so we'll start fastening our cable on the wall here. I'll unroll it so it's not all twisted up. And I'll say we'll put our first outlet about right in here, so I'll just bend our cable here like this. There we go. Okay, so we'll use our cutter again here, and we'll get our first box ready to put up. Okay, so we'll get our cable cut again here. So get our thing pointed down the way you want it to. Right there. And we'll just turn it until you hear it turning freely. There it is, it's turning freely, so we just pop it out. We'll loosen this up. Take our cable off. We'll go grab our bushing. I'll cut our little bit of a sharp edge off here so it's not poking into our wires here. Put our red anti-short bushing in here. There we go, we got it in there nice and tight, and we'll take some electrical tape and we'll tape it in place. You don't have to tape it according to code, but I like to do it just so that it's nice and sturdy and our bushing stays in place. Now look, make sure our screw isn't cutting through or could damage the wires inside. Nope, it's not. So we'll open up the knockout on our box here. And we'll be coming out the bottom one here. Flush on the bottom of our board there. Well, balls are beginning it out. Nice and tight. Box nice and straight here. And we'll get our strap on here. Okay, we'll tighten our ring up on the inside here. Another clamp right here. Okay, so here's our first outlet. Okay, so we'll get our piece to go to our next one here. We want to have plenty of, put our cable in here like this. See how I have that little hook thing facing down so it grabs it properly. And just tighten it up, turn it. And I just keep turning until I feel it turning. See, I feel it turning freely now, so I just loosen this. Then I'll cut my sharp edge off there so we don't cut into our wires here. And I'll go get a bushing. Get it nice and seated like that there. See how our bushing is all seated in there very nicely? I'll get my electrical tape. I'll just tape it so it stays in here so it doesn't move around. Look, make sure our screw's not puncturing the wires underneath. Cable into the box here. This is where our first outlet is going to go. Okay. Bring our cable down to about right here, so we'll cut it right here. so we got our cable all clamped down nice and secure here. So we have our first outlet here, and we're going to get our last outlet hooked up right in here. Get our cable into our clamp the way we want it. So we gotta have this thing here facing down. See how it's facing down like that? When I first got it, I was doing it facing up and it was a lot harder, so it's gotta be like that there. I'll just start turning until I feel it turning freely. Squeeze in. There we go. Now it's just turning freely, so it's all the way through. We'll loosen this up. Pull it off like that. Again, I'll cut off my sharp edge here so we don't puncture wire here. And we'll put in our anti-short bushing here. Get it down in nice and flat like that there. We'll stick our connector on here. I'll tape it up just to have to give a little extra support so it stays in place. This is our last outlet. screws in each box to hold it. I'll come back here and see if I got 3 in this one. I'll stick another one in this one. Matter of fact, I'll put 4 on each just to make sure they're nice and solid. So now we're ready to hook our outlets up on here. So we have to use our green screw to bond our ground wire to the box and to our outlets. So we'll take our green wire here. I make our wires nice and long, so I'll show you why I do that. So I'll strip here and here. We're going to make our loop here, like this. And then we'll get it back into here where our screw is going to be. Get it back in here. I'm not going to shape my conductors with the needle nose because I can't puncture the insulation, but this is the ground wire we're putting in here. Use my Phillips. Get it back in here. Close my loop the direction our screw turns. Okay. I pull it back, make sure I got this under the screw head all the way around here. Well, it just opened up our loop, so I have to take it out. I have to flip this loop around because I put it around the screw counterclockwise rather than clockwise. So I'm just going to flip our loop around the other way. Because if you put it around the screw counterclockwise, it will open the loop when you tighten the screw. So when you put it in this way, clockwise, it closes the loop when you tighten the screw. So make sure our loop is nice and closed tight here like this. Now when we tighten this, it's going to close our loop the way we want it to. Okay, so now we're ready to hook our outlets up to our box here. So we'll get our extension ring here. This is the extension ring to put our outlets on here. So we'll stick it on like this. I'm just going to make sure that our ring is nice and tight in here. Okay, so we'll get this under here. I hate flathead screwdrivers when I'm doing these. Let's bring it up. Okay, so now we're ready to hook our outlets up. So we'll get our wires skinned and stripped and ready to hook our outlets up. So we'll skin here, and we'll skin about right here. And we'll just go up our insulation between the score marks. Okay, we'll do the same with our white wire. I'll take just a little more off of here. I'll just break that off by hand there. And we'll do the same here. We'll skin here. And we'll come down here. You always strip with the hole that matches the wire you're using. And we'll do the same with our ground wire. Our other wires off so they're even here. And we'll strip them. We'll take about an inch off of each one. Alrighty, so if you look closely, the outlets are made here in the country I was born in. That's a nice thing to see, isn't it? Okay, so we'll start with closing the screws that we're not going to be using. Okay, so here in the country I was born in, our outlets are polarized. Your black wire or your live wire goes to the brass screw, which is the narrow slot. Your white, which is neutral, goes on the silver screw, and the green or the bare wire goes on the ground screw. And keep in mind, red and blue are also live colors, and you may find red and blue used as the live with a white wire. So we'll hook our wires up. We'll start with our white and our ground first. So we'll make our loops so the insulation is even here at the top and on the bottom. We'll close it. Close it like that there. I like closing the screws that we're not going to be using so that they're not floating around where if you touch something you don't want it to touch. So there's our white. Make sure your copper is under the screw head all the way around. And we'll flip it around here. We'll bring our white over our ground and our okay, now we'll put our black wire, which is the live one, on our green screw. Close it. Go. That's what we want. Now we put our first outlet into the box. Bring our wires over. We'll fold them in so that they don't pinch against anything, and we can screw it in with our screw gun. I just want to make sure our screws don't hit wires in here. Screws aren't going to hit any of the wires, and they're not. And I get them centered on here so they're nice and straight. And our cover will fit nicely. I'll have to go get some covers later. Alright, so close the screws we're not going to be using. I'll shorten our black one up some here. Can we put our black wire on the brass screw here? Make sure it's nice and tight like that there. That's what we want. Put our white wire on the silver screw here. And get it nice and tight, and that's what we want. Now we can push this one into the box here. Ground wire down here in the bottom. And make sure our wires aren't being hit by the screws. Okay, let's get it centered here on our box like this. Make sure our screws aren't getting hit by the wires. So we got our last outlet done, so now we'll come down into our next one. Okay, so first we'll make our cable connectors are tight here. So we bond our ground wire to the box. Gotta get this little broken piece off here. Cutter's left behind. So we'll get it looped so we can put it around our green screw here. so we don't get our insulation caught under the screw head, and we close our loop all the way. So we have our greens here, and we're going to cut a nice long piece here to go outlet to outlet. Okay, so we'll get all our copper even at the top here, and our insulation is all even on the bottom. See how nice and even that came out? Take our wire nut, and we'll just twist it on here evenly. With live conductors, you want to make sure that the insulation is going up into the bottom of the wire nut. And in this case it is, but it's a ground wire, so it's not as critical here for its function, but for cosmetics I like to keep it the same. See how I'm getting a nice even twist in here? So we'll put our ground wires up into our box, get them out of the way here. So we're ready to go outlet to outlet with our ground, and we're going to get a black and white to go between the two outlets. Here's that little piece the cutter's left behind. So we'll take an inch off of each of our wires here. So we're going to use both terminals here, so we're going to make our loop with our ground wire. Put it on our green screw here. Strip that one a little long so I can just slide the insulation down a little bit there. Make sure it's tight. We'll get our mud ring here. strip that one a little long, so we'll take a little off here. Make sure our insulation is not caught under our screw head and we have a connection like what we want. This one accepts the Phillips screwdrivers, so I'm glad. You always put your wire around the screw the direction your screw turns. Make sure it's nice and tight, and that's what we want there. Okay, we'll flip this around. We'll get our green ground wire to come over here to our other outlet. And we'll hook our black one up here. Make sure it's nice and tight, and our insulation's not caught under the screw head, and that's what we want. Make sure it's nice and tight like that, and we'll screw this into our box. Okay, so we'll put our ground wire on our green screw here. Make sure it's nice and tight and our insulation is not caught under our screw head. Like that. Flip it around so we can put our wires into our box. Make sure it's tight, make sure that's what we want there. Put our wires back into our box here, make sure they go in without any stress. And look, make sure our screws aren't going to hit the wires. Okay, our screws aren't going to hit any of the wires here. Get them centered on the holes here so that it's flat against our box. So now we're ready to hook up down here to our last outlet. Okay, so we have a green screw back here. We're going to tail in, but we're going to make sure our connector is on here nice and tight before we do that. Make sure our wires are nice and perfectly straight before we put them inside that Wago so it gets a good connection. And this is the one we're going to put to our box. We're going to strip about this much off. And I'm going to show you how to make sure you don't have too much insulation behind it. You want to make sure the insulation goes up into that yellow a little bit, so I got to clip just a tiny bit off. This is a ground, but it's not that critical, but what you're doing live conductors, it is. So that's what you want, like that, right there. So we push it in like this, feel the little barb. The insulation goes up into the yellow like that there. And we'll hook our other two conductors up. Make sure our copper is coming up to the top of the Wago. See how our copper is coming up to the top there? Same with our final wire here. We'll push it in. See how our copper is all the way up to the top? So now we'll cut this back a little bit here. Make sure we round our screw nice and tight here. So now we have our ground bonded to our box, and now we'll take this one outlet off here, so we can hook our other conductors up onto this. So we gotta push our other ground wire into the Wago. Strip a little bit off like this. We'll push our fourth one in here. I feel that little barb, push it up in. And there's how I want it to look, like that there. There, all our four of our coppers are up even at the top there, and now we can just push this back into our box. Okay, so hook our white and our black up to our device here. So we'll take off about an inch. Then you always put your wire the direction the screw turns. Okay, make sure it's nice and tight like that. Start wrapping it around a little bit, so I'm going to loosen this up again. Okay, there it is. That's what we want right there. Okay, now we'll bring it around here and we'll get our black onto our brass screw over here. Take a smidgen more off here. so it's nice and tight like that. Now I can set it back down into our cover here. One, two, and now we can put our wires back into our box and then make sure nothing's going to get pinched in here. Our ground wires are down where they're not going to touch anything. We'll keep this back. And push this back up in. It looks like it might move down, but I'm going to just make sure it's up all the way. And now we can just push this back, make sure nothing's in the way of anything. Okay, let's make sure our screws here aren't going to hit anything. The screws down there aren't going to hit anything. Make sure these screws are tight. And we are set. So this is the tester to verify our outlets are hooked up correctly. And this is a button to test it if it's a GFI circuit, but this is not a GFI circuit. So you'll see the two orange lights light. That means the outlet is hooked up correctly. So we'll plug it in here. And it's hooked up correctly. Alrighty, so thanks for watching. That is how to add outlets here in the country I was born in a commercial building using MC cable. Peace. Thanks for watching.